372. I am your host, Keith Andrew. Along here is Stephen Brown. I just want to say thank you for accepting my request and being a guest on the talk show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, the honor's all mine. Now, for people who want to know what my talk show is about, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities. But you should never give up. You should prove to people you can still amount to something. Labels do not dictate who you are or who you're going to be. You should prove to them you can still amount to something. So hashtag break the labels. Never give up and prove people wrong. That being said, half hour, 35 minutes of your time. Say anything you want, talk about anything you want. It's basically a normal conversation. And starting off, what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Texas and Arkansas, and you may not have realized that just from listening to me, because when I went into the Navy right out of high school, I decided to get rid of my southern accent as much as possible, and that's served me well in acting as well, to be able to go from accent to accent and different ways of speaking. But I found out that in the military especially, people judge you on the way you speak. So if you talk like this right here, people think you're just a dumb old hick, and don't know anything. So I've been studying acting and studying actors for all my life, basically, since I was a little kid watching TV and film. That's a long time ago. I'll be 55 in September, and so I've seen a lot of this world. In fact, during my 16 years in the Navy, and as a subsequent civilian, I've been completely around the world and seen 24 countries so far.
No, that's really cool. We can save the acting questions for a little bit. But the first thing I want to say is thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And it's the first question I was going to ask you is, who influenced you to join the Navy? And how many years are you still active, or are you retired?
No, I took early retirement back in '93, and I went back in for 3 years of reserves. But my grandpa was in World War II in the Army. My dad was in between, right after Korea, before Vietnam, in the Marine. Had an uncle in the Air Force, and I don't know any direct family members that were in the Navy. I knew I wanted to serve my country, and I didn't want to stick around my hometown of Jonesboro, Arkansas. That's where I grew up and graduated high school. So I was interested in electronics and technology because I had been in 2 years of vocational technical school during high school in electronics, and that was really interesting to me. So that's what I went into the Navy for, as an electronic warfare technician is what my job was called. But so I spent 13 years active and 3 years in reserves.
No, that's really cool. And you mentioned warfare, so you work on missiles and everything?
No, actually, electronic warfare is just like that. Using electronics as a means of warfare, as the job that I did was a defensive position. So you mentioned missiles. So when missiles would come at us, if they did, which they never did, I was never directly involved in any kind of actual battle or warfare per se. But we were taught and learned how to divert those missiles with electronics and with chaff, as we called it, or flares or something like that. It was anyway.
Hey, as North Korea, doing whatever the hell they're doing, it's always good to have veterans like yourself that if you need help, you're always there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can attest to the at the time that I got out anyway, our extreme superiority in the technology areas in the military, because that was my field of expertise, and I learned a lot about all the different countries and their capabilities. I had a secret clearance, so I was able to learn about things that a lot of the public doesn't know. If I told you, I'd have to kill you. So no, that's a line. That's a line from Top Gun, by the way. Never seen it.
Yeah, great movie. And the next question I was going to ask you on the subject, my grandfather served in World War II. He was
Huh?
in engineering, and I think he was either building bridges in the desert or he was fighting Germans in the desert. It was one of them.
Yeah, nice. My grandpa was over in the Battle of the Bulge. At least that's one place I know he was during that time.
My next question I was asked you, you said you traveled all over the world. What were some of your favorite countries you went to, and what were some of the worst?
I liked. Well, it was kind of both. It was very expensive, but Monte Carlo, Monaco, was very nice on the French Riviera, and we traveled. I'd never been to France either, so France borders Monaco, and we took a train. A few of us took a train across the border into Nice, France. That was nice. Uh, and what was Jamaica was nice. I remember seeing a sign in Jamaica, and I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else in the world. It said, "Caution, sleeping policeman ahead." Why are they warning us that there's a policeman asleep up ahead? But what they were talking about was a speed bump. That's what they called it. Sleeping policeman, like he's laying in the road. It's funny.
Now, what about, let's see, what were some of your funny stories about being in the Navy?
Oh, some I probably can't repeat over. uh, well, we always had a lot of traditions in the Navy. A tradition means, in the Navy, it means doing something more than twice the same way. So we had these hazing rituals, if you will, sort of with new guys that come on board, and we would send them down to the boiler room, and we would send them down for something called a BT punch, which didn't exist. Well, it does exist, but BT is a boiler technician. That's the guys that worked on the boilers, and send them down for a BT punch. The BTs would punch them, and then or send them for 20 yards of gig line, which is not a thing. A gig line is the line that where your shirt goes down to your pants and how they line up. But anyway, or send them on the front forecastle, as we call it. It's spelled forecastle, but we called it forecastle, with a helmet on and a life jacket and a hook, and send them for mail buoy watch, which is non-existent. It's just fun things to get new guys on. Oh, I remember in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, I was on shore patrol, and I was with my partner. We were going through this alley, and then I saw something up against a trash can that looked like a dog or a cat, a small dog or a small cat. Then I realized it was a rat. It was huge. And we diverted our attention and went a different direction, so we didn't want to tangle with a rat that side.
Now, my next question I was going to ask you is, have you ever fired a gun, number one, and what was your first experience like being on the submarine? Because a lot of people say if you look at a submarine from the outside, those things are massive. but on the inside they're really cramped. So my first question is, have you ever shot a weapon, and what was your experience like in the submarine?
I was never in a submarine. I was always on surface ships. My first ship was an Adams class destroyer,
Oh, nice.
DDG-10, on the East Coast out of Mayport, Florida. My second ship was an amphibious landing ship, LPD-7, USS Cleveland, out of San Diego, California. So I was a surface guy, or as the submariners called us, targets. And we called the submariners bubbleheads. That's everybody has a nickname for what they do. Yes, we did fire weapons for training and qualification. I fired a 45 caliber handgun, a 12 gauge shotgun, and an M14 rifle, just for qualification and training. Never had to fire one in real life, in a real situation. 16 years in the Navy. I was so blessed that I was never directly involved with any kind of combat.
It's always good. Now, my next question I was going to ask you is, have you ever had any, wrapping up this segment anyway, and we can go to the acting, have you ever had any conflicts with people you worked with, or any commands?
Oh, of course, everybody. You live in such close quarters, you're going to have some conflicts, but you learn how to deal with them. There's a strict structure and how to resolve issues through your chain of command. You have your work center supervisor, you have your leading petty officer, you have your leading chief petty officer, you have the division officer, the department head, the executive officer, and the CEO. So there's a strict policies on chain of command and how to resolve things like that. I wouldn't call this a conflict necessarily, but I did, like I mentioned earlier, I served as shore patrol when we were in port, sometimes in other countries. I was also mess ex or duty master at arms. So whenever guys would come back from a time out in town, some of them would be inebriated, they'd be drunk.
Yeah.
And so they would want to fight somebody sometimes. And of course, if you know anything about people that are drunk, they don't have the best coordination. So they try to fight, but they can't. So I'd have to subdue them and get them in their living compartments and make sure they had someone keeping an eye on them so they wouldn't cause trouble.
No, absolutely. Now, my next subject I want to talk to you about is your acting. Now, because you are a former Marine, does that... Navy. No disrespect.
Right.
You were in the Navy. Now, does that help you with your acting career of getting in certain parts?
Oh, sure. I think any experience in life can help with acting because whenever you go to approach a role, you take parts of yourself and your experience and draw from that to put it into that role. And then what you don't know, you research and talk to other people and find out, okay, what is this situation like? For instance, my first lead role was about a year ago, and I played a U.S. Army veteran with PTSD raising a 13-year-old son. He was homeless, too. Homeless veteran with PTSD raising a 13-year-old son who had been in battle in Afghanistan. So I'd never experienced that, so I had to talk to some people about what that was like, what PTSD is like, and what the symptoms are, and so forth like that. I've raised plenty of teenagers, so I knew what that was like. Between my wife and I, we have a blended family of 9 kids and 12 grandkids, or 13 grandkids now. Just had our 13th grandchild.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
Actually, you do bring up a good point. What do you think about the PS post-traumatic stress disorder? Do you think that's the government's responsibility to help people like that?
Oh, sure, and they do. The VA and other many organizations, both civilian and government organizations, are getting on board and connecting and trying to help people. Like the production company that filmed this film called Penny Como, and then the subtitle is PTSD Does Not Have to Be the End of a Soldier's Story, is Impact 22 or Studio 222 Films. And the 22, the number, is significant in that every day around 22 veterans commit suicide because of PTSD. And that's why they filmed this movie, to bring awareness to it. And at the end of the movie, they had a little talk over it and a website that people could go to get help.
Well, you bring up a good point, and you just the question I was going to ask you is, I'm just trying to find a way how to phrase it without sounding like an asshole. What would you say happened from your grandparents, our grandparents' generation to now? Supposed to, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And do you think it's gotten worse over the years? Because, people from World War II never came back and killed themselves. But you see people coming back from Iran and Pakistan and all the other wars, and they just flip off the handle. So I know there's a big difference from 70 years ago to now. So the question I'm asking is, do you think it gotten worse, or what made it worse?
Well, I think people deal with their issues differently now than they did back then. And there were instances, and there were lots of them, and they didn't call it PTSD back in those days in World War II. They called it shell shock or battle fatigue. And it's evolved over the years and gotten more attention and awareness to it. So there's more people reporting instances of it. And I think our society is much different now. It's much more fast-paced, a lot of input, a lot of external stimuli coming at us all the time, information and so forth, which I think causes more stress if we have a lot of stimuli coming at us at the same time. Younger folks, they can listen to music and watch TV and do homework all at the same time. I couldn't do that. I had to have, quiet to be able to concentrate. I think it has to do with our ability to process those emotions and to understand them and realize. And I'm sure there were people in the World War II, Vietnam era. It got worse over time. Vietnam, you heard a lot about it, because when they came back from Vietnam, they weren't well received by a lot of the U.S. population. So they had a lot of stress there, and there were a lot of instances of guys killing themselves, but it may not have been reported as directly related to PTSD.
All right. Now we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to pass the show over to you.
Okay.
A message for yourself or as a gift for someone else. For personal connections, shout-outs, birthdays, proposals, weddings, and much more. Enter your details about yourself so the celebrity can record a personal video message especially for you, including details such as your name, age, birthday, hobbies, or whatever else you include. As soon as the video has been recorded, you'll get an email with your link so you can share it on social media or download and keep it. Celebrities record videos as and when they can, usually within 2 weeks. But if you want a video for a specific date and it does not look like it will arrive in time, you can cancel it and get an instant refund at the click of a button. There are hundreds of celebrities to choose from, and many more joining every day. Search by category or genre. Buy a gift voucher, get updates and offers, and encourage your favorite celebrities to join so they can connect with fans in a fun and unique way. Raise money for their charities, and much more. So order your video now for yourself or for someone else.
372. I'm here with Stephen Brown, and I just want to say thank you for sticking with us.
Thank you.
With the last 15 minutes left of the show, I'm going to pass it to you. And I know we talked about this before we came back to the break. You mentioned you had your own album, and you have your own film that's in the process. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's not my film per se. I had a small role in this film called Summer of '67. And if you remember 1967, that was the middle of Vietnam War era, and it takes a different look at Vietnam era in that it's focusing on the women and the families that were left behind during that time frame. It does focus on some of the military aspect of it, but more on 2 or 3 girls, so to speak. And I played a minister in one of the scenes, just during one of the church scenes as I was preaching a sermon. So I had to be clean shaven, which my wife doesn't like because when we met, I had this goatee, and that's how she knew me. And anytime I have to shave it, she says I look so totally different. She can hardly look at me for the first couple of days. I'm like a stranger to her. But, of course, a Baptist minister in 1967 didn't have facial hairs. The things we do for our art is, but it was fun. It was interesting working with Sharon Wilharm. She's had her and her husband have a company that have had a few productions, films that have made an impact, and they're up and coming. So I wanted to be involved with them. You mentioned my latest CD. It's called Momentum. This is the 6th album that I've recorded on, not all originals. This one is all but 1 originals. And there are 7 songs on it. It's kind of an eclectic mix of styles. It goes from jazz to blues to rock, country, gospel, but all with a positive message on it. And of course, anybody can find information about me and what I've done on my website. It's real easy to find, stephenbrown.org, STEVENBROWN.org.
Well, the next thing I was going to say, if the show is still on the air, I'm surprised you didn't want to be on Breaking Bad. You do look like Bryan Cranston. If you just shave your head, he doesn't look like Walter White.
Yeah, I've been told that. I've also been told that I kind of resemble what's his name? Louis C.K. Comedian, you know him?
Right.
He's from New York. And then, who else? Richard Dreyfuss. I don't see that now, but when I was younger.
Now I see it. Now the next question I was going to ask you is, are you on social media? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Stage 32, all of that fun stuff?
Oh, yes. Just about everyone, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database. I have a page on there. Reverb Nation, SoundCloud, Google+, LinkedIn, all those, and some others that are a little more obscure, but those are the main ones. And if you go to my website, you'll see links at the very top that you can get to those, and other things, links below that.
Now, the last subject I do want to talk to you about is social media. Can social media make you or break you? Because you said you were in the Navy. Sorry, you said you were in the Navy. Do you think that, trying to find the words for it, do you think social media would have played a part in you staying in the Navy longer or getting a part in movies because you were in the Navy?
I don't know. I don't think I was ready at the time until I didn't really think about acting professionally until about 2007. So that I had been out of the Navy a few years. My first professional acting job, I kind of went and auditioned on a whim. I heard that they were having auditions down at the Mansion Theater in Branson, Missouri for a show. It was kind of a Broadway-style musical drama called The Promise, and it was my first time to audition, and I got a part. The first year, I was just a guy in the background singing with no mic, no real roles, so to speak, a townsperson, a shepherd, that kind of thing. But the second year, I was promoted into 4 roles. One was pretty prominent in the show. And that really encouraged me to continue on. And then I went in and got some more training with a company called AMTC, which is Actors, Models, and Talent for Christ out of Atlanta. But I studied in Dallas, Texas, and culminated in a program and graduation in Orlando, Florida. So I learned a lot from them on the industry and how to create a resume and headshots and all that stuff, and everything that's auditioning, all the things behind the scenes, and of course acting techniques. Sorry if you can hear that. I don't know how to turn that off while I've got Skype on. Hope it doesn't detract from what I'm saying. But anyway, that was my first real professional gig, and then professional training. And from there, I've since 2014, I've been cast in over 32 roles now, 21 of them in films, mostly short films, a couple of feature films, TV. I had one big TV spot so far, and that was in a show called I'd Kill for You. I don't know if you've seen that on, what's that? Anyway, it was through NBC Universal and shown on cable. It's one of those reenactments of true crimes, and I was the stepdad of the victim, so I looked the part. I had to drive all the way from Southwest Missouri to El Paso, Texas, which, if you up on your geography, that's about 14 hours.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. And it was in the middle of summer, and it was hot, 102 degrees down there. Fortunately, I got to go back into the house where it was air conditioned, but the victim, the guy that was playing my stepson, he had to lay out there while they were setting the scene up after he'd been shot, and sweating and rehydrating. He earned his money, that's what I'm saying. So I enjoy acting, but I enjoy music as well. Some people ask me, well, which would you rather do, acting or music? And I say, yes, whichever one is giving me or is allowing me to do my craft. My calling is both, either or. It's not an either or proposition. It's both.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. There's a website that I played during the breaks called CelebrityVM.com. And CelebrityVM is you sign up, and it's basically you interact with your fans, and your fans interact with you. So for an example, I'm on there. So for $30, people will be like, hey, Keith, I like your show. Today's my birthday. I'm getting married. Can you give me a shout out? And or whatever the case may be. And for $30, I get to say whatever. But I think you should be on there. That's something you should be interested in.
Okay, yeah, send me a link. I'll take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, wrapping up the talk show, the last thing I do want to talk to you about is I do have a couple questions off the air.
Mhm.
But the last subject I want to ask you is when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your first reaction? And after doing the interview, how you feel now?
Well, I didn't really know you, but you came highly recommended from a fellow actor of mine, Dean Philippi, and he suggested that we become Facebook friends, so we did, and then you contacted me. So it's good to know a mutual acquaintance, so I know you're not just some flake. But no, I've done lots of radio interviews, done a few TV interviews. I'm going to do another TV interview in January down in the Dallas area. So this is not new to me. Anytime I can talk about what I'm doing and get some exposure and meet some new people and possibly some new friends, fans, followers, whatever. People don't understand why I'm so outgoing on social media. My wife is very private, but the more people I can connect with, the more people I can speak to. If I have something positive I want to say, something I want to uplift people, to encourage them, the bigger the audience, the better, you know.
No, absolutely. And it's kind of hard to stay private if you really want to be out there and be known and be famous.
Yeah. Famous or infamous, either way, yeah.
With that being said, I do have a couple questions off the air, but wrapping up our interview segment, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.